Thank you, Rabban, and the organizers of this event. I will just share my screen straight away. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, looking good, Vianny. You can just hit the presenter view and we should be, there we go. Perfect.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I had some challenges logging in, but I'm here. So good morning, everyone. I welcome you to this presentation, which is about open data sharing opportunities for freshwater biodiversity conservation. And this presentation is part of JRS Biodiversity Foundation funded project at NAFIRI. Once again, my name is Vianny Natugonza, and I work for the Maritime Institute, which is in Busitema University. So I will give this presentation as a former director, not the director of the project. The current director, of course, is Rabban. As part of this presentation, I will give you a short background that motivated our work at NAFIRI, and how we are responding to local and international goals with respect to biodiversity data and conservation. Then I will share with you some highlights of our data mobilization efforts at NAFIRI and how we have actually revolutionized data access in Uganda. Then, of course, I will also give some highlight on how different stakeholders can use the biodiversity portal. But of course, Rabban will give a detailed presentation and discussion. And then I will end my presentation by sharing with you the lessons that we have learned from the open access data project at NAFIRI, and basically where we want to see this work in the future, and the opportunities for cross learning, of course. And I will endeavor to keep this presentation short. So in this slide, I highlight some of the challenges in freshwater biodiversity conservation, and especially in Africa, and again focusing on data availability and access. And I think you all know that biodiversity in general is more threatened in Africa, maybe than anywhere in the world, except Asia, maybe. And the biggest challenge we are facing is that we have to deal with multiple threats, and of course the magnitude of these threats is increasing, and the threats are increasingly becoming interconnected. For instance, most of the rivers are choking on dams, wetlands and inshore habitats have been degraded, and the overexploitation of fisheries resources has basically become endemic. The most important thing is that all these stressors are known. But again, freshwaters are still overlooked, especially in international policies. When it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals, you would hardly see freshwaters mentioned anywhere. And some scientists now believe that this situation is partly due to lack of reliable data, and hence the limited awareness of the by the public and decision makers. Now, just make this point clear about lack of data and access. Let's look at freshwater biodiversity access in Uganda, especially before our intervention in 2017. If you look at the map of life on this right-hand side of my screen, and of course, the map of life is an online publicly accessible biodiversity data portal. And as you can see, while some data is available for a number of biodiversity taxa, no data were available for underwater freshwater biodiversity, which include fish, invertebrates, and phytoplankton. And this one, of course, is for Uganda. And this is one of the this is what motivated us to actually start our work in Uganda, because this state of limited information access made assessments of changes in aquatic biodiversity by research agencies, including NAFIRI, extremely difficult. Let's look at the GBIF, which is well known as an open access freshwater biodiversity data repository. And again, before our intervention, if you look at fish as our, let me say, flagship taxon, it constituted less than 1% of all the data available on GB for Uganda. Then for Chromista at least for Chromista, there were some records, but when you look at the zooplankton, for instance, there was nothing in GB. And overall, of course, the total number of occurrence records were less than 1%, and more than 50% of these records, by the way, were not georeferenced and validated. If you look at the data itself, you will see that all biodiversity data that were published on GBIF for Uganda were published through a third-party institution. We found that no Ugandan institution had ever directly published data through GBIF. And maybe that can explain why freshwater biodiversity data were lacking. If you look at the national, we have the National Biodiversity Data Bank in Uganda. But again, the whole database is offline, and you can maybe only access that data if you go to Makerere University, where the database is housed. So the question we may want to answer is where freshwater biodiversity data for Uganda were kept before our project. And at the beginning of our interventions at NAFIRI, we conducted data mapping in a good number of institutions in Uganda that we thought were deeply involved in freshwater biodiversity monitoring, including NAFIRI, of course. And we found that data were actually available, but scattered in technical reports, as you can see in some of these photos, the last three photos, and then of course, a lot of data were also locked up in the museum that you could only access this information if you ever visited NAFIRI. And we felt that that situation should actually change. So at NAFIRI, around 2017, we applied for a small grant from GBIF, and it was basically a small institutional grant But that grant helped us to actually build our capacity and prepare for a much more bigger grant, which was actually funded by the GRS Biodiversity Foundation. The GRS Biodiversity Foundation actually funded our work to move forward the work we had started with the GBIF project. And in this case, of course, in addition to data mobilization and digitization, we were interested in creating an online kind of database, again, which is tailored to both local and international needs to increase the use of freshwater biodiversity data in conservation, planning, and recovery of threatened species. So since 2017, we have so far had two major projects with regard to freshwater biodiversity data and open access. And in the GRS project, we proposed 4 technical solutions. And the first, of course, was to follow up on the work that had been funded by GBIF to mobilize more data, especially by going outside NAFIRI, which is our institution, our home institution, and basically looking at other data holders within the country and beyond. And for that technical solution, of course, we proposed to publish over 25,000 occurrence, data through GBIF on various freshwater taxa, including fish, invertebrates, and algae. Of course, I will show you the progress we have made with regard to this technical solution in the subsequent slides. The second was to create an online data portal. Of course, this the motivation to this was that while GBIF provides an extensive repository for biodiversity information, it doesn't cover all the aspects that may be of interest to local users. So we decided, in addition to the data we are publishing through GBIF, we create an online portal where we can put more detailed information that are tailored to local needs. Then the third technical solution, of course, was about capacity building. In the previous slide, I showed you that out of actually over 400,000 occurrence records that had been published through GBIF by 2017, none of those records were published by the Ugandan institution. And the reason is clear. Of course, we lacked capacity to do that. So we proposed that as our technical solution in GBIF. And of course, we wanted to use the data and the data portal to create key biodiversity areas. In Uganda, we have so many protected areas. There are about 28, but none of these areas, none of these protected areas were primarily gazetted to protect freshwater taxa. So we proposed to identify and map and delineate these key biodiversity areas so that maybe they can act as a precursor to protecting freshwater taxa. So I will now share with you some progress we have made with regard to these projects. This graph shows the occurrence data that have been published through GBIF over time. And as you can see, the amount of data available through GBIF actually jumped within the last 3 years, and specifically, of course, the data representing the freshwater taxa increased from less than 1%, I can say, in 2017 to about 10% in 2020, and that is a huge contribution. And by the way, NAFIRI is now one of the leading publishers of biodiversity data on GBI in Africa. Of course, we are grateful to GBIF and GRS Biodiversity Foundation for their support. Now let's look at the online data portal. And like I said, not all the data that are relevant for local policy decision makers can be accessed through GBIF. Because GBIF has a predetermined or predefined kind of template, and in some cases it misses some important variables that are of interest to the local users. So we decided to create our own data portal, and of course, developing this portal has been kind of a steep learning curve, as Vincent will explain in the next presentation. But of course, what we did was relying on locally available skills. So we never intended to hire any expert from anywhere to develop our data portal. And this one was, of course, informed by the need for sustainability. So what we did was to create this data portal locally, but of course, taking, we are also cognizant of the international and national acceptable standards.